Good evening. It is Sunday, November 24th, 2024. You're listening to Weather with Enthusiasm. This is Simcha Lefton, your weather enthusiast, also podcaster, bringing to you the latest weather forecast for this upcoming week. Also some very interesting stuff that's going to be going on across the Midwest this week, affecting the Chicago area, along with other cities. Indianapolis, Indiana is certainly a point of interest this week, along with areas just to the north of that, including portions of Ohio. There's a lot to speak about this week, but there's a lot that might not happen. One thing that's almost for sure going to happen is a major Arctic blast that comes into the region later in the week. The reason for this Arctic blast has to do with a very solid snowpack which has developed over in western Canada. That snowpack continues to expand. It's really solid, and the air has been sitting there for quite some time. The Arctic air has not been spilling south. You know, the 4 inches of snow that we got here in the Chicago area last week, that was something totally incredible, really, to get 4 inches of snow with limited Arctic air. A lot of that happened from dynamic cooling. Everything came together to produce the maximum amount of snow possible. It was a backward system, a system that almost never should have happened. It happened. The storm system moved backwards. The highest amounts were right along Lake Michigan, despite the fact it's November, despite the fact the Lake Michigan water temperatures are so mild this time of the year. The Chicago area, Evanston, got the most in our region with 4.2 inches of snow. This week, we are going in the opposite direction regarding a storm system, which we'll talk about in just a second. But we are also, the Arctic air comes down strong this week, so strong that it might be interfering with a storm system. Very strange stuff. Last week was strange stuff one way. The storm system that almost shouldn't have brought snow, it brought the maximum amount of snow possible. This week, a storm system that it's almost under the most ideal conditions possible to totally explode into a deep storm. Just might not happen. In fact, it's likely for it not to happen due to a strong zonal flow, and it's just, for the snow lovers, it's such a shame. It's definitely not going to happen, but at this point, it doesn't look like it's going to be happening. One of the things that gives a storm its energy on land is contrast in temperatures. This system has a contrast in temperatures, Arctic air to its north. We have warm Gulf air to the south. Contrast in temperatures is there. The problem is it's really the way the Arctic air is coming in. The Arctic, it does not have a south to north flow. You know, that front is very much just taking over south and east at the same time. So the storm system that develops midweek here in the country, in the southern plains on Tuesday, and moves east, it really moves east almost like directly east. A little bit southeast at first, a little bit northeast, but pretty much just east. And the storm just doesn't have enough time to mature. It doesn't have enough time to develop. By the time it hits the Appalachian Mountains, it's already on the East Coast. It eventually is forecasted to develop into a major storm up in the East Coast and places in the inland portions of New York, Pennsylvania, places closer to Buffalo, New York. That area could get hit pretty hard, especially the state of Maine. And then eventually this storm develops such a powerful spin to it, it actually starts to retrograde again towards the Hudson Bay in Canada. This week, we here in the Midwest, we have Arctic blast number 1 comes through for tomorrow night. Some showers possible with the associated storm system here in the Chicago area for tonight, tomorrow. The Arctic blast comes in tomorrow night. High temperatures might not even hit 40 degrees on Tuesday. Could see some snowflakes along that front. This other storm system number 2, which in theory could, you know, the National Weather Service of Chicago tells us, climatologically speaking, or statistically speaking, the chances of such a system becoming into a major winter storm versus the chances of it not are exactly 50-50. Whether the storm develops or doesn't, statistically speaking, is exactly 50-50. There is right now we're favored for it not to develop due to a strong zonal flow. That's one thing. However, there are models still showing that the thing might develop, and the National Weather Service here says that the potential still exists for a significant winter storm. for a winter storm here in the Chicago area. That's what the National Weather Service tells us in its forecast discussion, which you will not hear about in the official weather forecast here in the Chicago area. But the more likely scenario right now, according to as advertised on windy.com, the European model, the GFS model, and the ICON German model, all of them show the system just moving east too quickly, storm system not really developing. Even those areas that do end up getting snow, we don't have that typical 6 to 12 inch bullseye that we get with these types of storms here in the Midwest. This one, if the maximum would be something like 2 to 6 inches, which is still significant. But also a meteorologist in Indianapolis has pointed out that the system it's so small that he compared it to a whipple ball, as opposed to a baseball. And the storm track could just change like that. So it's also difficult to forecast exactly, but the thing is small, so even those areas which are getting snow, well, you could have, again, some areas that get a few inches of snow, especially portions of central Indiana, maybe just to the north of Indianapolis. You could have a 3 to 6 inch bullseye. I mean, the thing does have Gulf moisture. We do have a low pressure system. It is going to be strengthening. It's not too intense. And we do have Arctic air. So we have those three ingredients. To produce a major winter storm, what you need is copious amounts of Gulf moisture and a strong area of low pressure. That's what we probably will not have. The strong area of low pressure with copious Gulf moisture. But we do have some Gulf moisture. We have a flow off the Gulf feeding into the system, and we also have an area of low pressure. So we could get not the typical 6 to 12 inches that we see here in the Midwest, but 3 to 6 inch in the bullseye. Storm goes south of Chicago. The Chicago area doesn't really get anything from it, but there's a clipper systems. One system, perhaps somewhere between the Saturday-Sunday time frame, that could produce an inch or two here and there, a series of clipper systems. You know, we're under this Arctic air, this weather pattern, a winter weather pattern for the next 10 days. And as this winter weather pattern takes over and the upper level flow becomes totally out of the northwest, that's when these clipper systems could move in. Clipper systems usually are not major systems here in Chicago. We've had exceptions. We've had times where it has had a run-in with Gulf moisture and really blew up. But in general, these things are minor. If you look on the computer models now, you'll see amounts of less than an inch would be forecasted with a weekend, the end of the weekend system, or the very beginning of next week. There are meteorologists who say we could get something more like 1 to 2 inches during that time frame. Those types of systems have a dry, powdery snow that tends to blow around. Very cold temperatures. That's what the high confidence is, with high temperatures only in the 20s after Arctic air mass number 2. And then the Clipper system brings in even colder air for the beginning part of next week. The Memphis, Tennessee National Weather Service has pointed out that the North Atlantic Oscillation Index, which is negative right now, goes into a neutral phase in mid-December. What that means is that although this is an extended spell of very cold temperatures, this spell is extended 6 to 10 days. The Climate Prediction Center tells us there's an 80 to 90% chance for well below normal temperatures for the next 6 to 10 days. Only a 33% chance for the development of a winter storm in the Chicago area for Thanksgiving. So we have a higher confidence in the cold 6 to 10 days out. That's due to a negative North Atlantic Oscillation Index. But beyond 10 days, the Memphis, Tennessee National Weather Service informs us that that index, as of now, is expected to become neutral. So we may not continue to see this below normal weather. And also the Memphis, Tennessee National Weather Service tells us that there are no indications right now for a warming in the stratosphere, which would indicate a possible weakening of the polar vortex, causing the polar vortex to come down south. There's no indications of that right now. But an extended spell of cold weather nonetheless, with several clipper systems possible during the latter half of this spell, bringing some quick inch of snows here and there. Again, 33% chance for an impactful winter storm. So the chances are we're not going to see it. for the middle part of this week. That's due to the zonal flow. Thank you for listening. I wish everybody a wonderful week and have a wonderful night.